gesture. For now, I am going to introduce somebody that most of you, if not all, know, the former ambassador to Ukraine, the director of the Eurasia Center at the Atlantic Council, our friend and great supporter, John Herbst. John.
Bob, thank you very much. It's my honor to introduce Steve Biegun, the Deputy Secretary of State. Steve is well known, I think, to everyone who follows U.S. foreign policy. He's been the Deputy Secretary since December of last year. Before that, he was a special negotiator for North Korea. He has spent a career working both on foreign policy and in the business world, many years as a diplomat, as a foreign policy advisor in Congress, including the foreign policy advisor to Senate Majority Leader Frist 20 or so years ago. I first met Steve in the late 1990s when I was Consul General in Jerusalem. We both found out we like kids. But you need to know, and you probably already do, he has a strong, realistic view of the importance of American values and American power in foreign policy. And that is good news for those of us who argue for a realistic policy against Kremlin aggression and in favor of supporting Ukraine as the object of that aggression. Steve, over to you.
Thank you, John, and very nice to see you this morning. And Bob and Nadia McConnell, thank you for the invitation to speak here today, and thank you for your decades of leadership with the U.S. Ukraine Foundation. It's been nearly 25 years that we've worked together, and I'm so pleased to see you still hard at it, working for a free and independent and sovereign Ukraine. We may live in tumultuous times, but one thing remains certain: the United States' commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty, to its freedom, and to its economic success remain unchanged. You can rest assured that we will continue to push back against Russia's aggression in Ukraine, and we'll also do everything we can to seek to ensure that Russia fulfills fully its Minsk commitments and withdraws from the Donbass and returns full control of Crimea to the Ukrainian people. As Secretary Pompeo has made clear, Crimea is Ukraine, and the United States will never recognize Russia's attempt to annex Crimea. The list of speakers at this conference over the 2 days illustrates another important truth about Ukraine: that there is deep and bipartisan support for from the United States and the Congress and executive branch in backing Ukraine's future sovereignty and economic success. Each year, we provide hundreds of millions of dollars in military assistance, economic and democratic governance assistance, all this towards supporting the Ukrainian people in building a prosperous country with accountable institutions and aiding those on the front lines and the millions of Ukrainians who have been displaced by Russian aggression. Yes. Since 2014, the United States has generously devoted more than $4.5 billion to support Ukraine's success, and this includes three $1 billion sovereign loan guarantees. We remain steadfast in continuing to support judicial reform, law enforcement reform, and especially anti-corruption institutions in order to ensure a fair playing field for all investors, Ukrainian and international, so that Ukraine can grow and develop its own economy. We likewise were quite pleased to have provided more than $40 million in assistance to mitigate the devastating health impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. I want to highlight our strong support for Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic aspirations. We recognize every European nation's right to determine its own foreign policy orientation, including Ukraine's desire to join NATO and the European Union. The United States and fellow allies, by our 2008 Bucharest decision, made clear that Ukraine will become a member of NATO someday. We were pleased to welcome Ukraine as NATO's newest enhanced opportunities partner in 2020, and to have Foreign Minister Kuleba participate in the NATO Foreign Ministerial earlier this month to discuss our shared interests in security in the Black Sea region. As we all know, the United States also takes great interest in Ukraine's reform efforts, and it seeks to permanently help Ukraine shed its Soviet past, combat corruption, and strengthen its democratic institutions. Ukraine has faced many challenges over the years in pushing forward reforms to improve the lives of its people, but there has been notable progress, especially since the Revolution of Dignity in 2014. This year, we've seen, however, a discouraging trend of certain oligarchs and pro-Russian interests seeking to use all the tools available to them to undermine Ukraine's institutional and reform gains. I personally am deeply concerned about current developments concerning the Constitutional Court and also steps taken by some members of the Rada to reverse anti-corruption efforts. We urge all Ukrainians to cooperate to reinstate Ukraine's anti-corruption tools immediately, while at the same time pursuing long-term judicial and law enforcement reform so that Ukraine's courts can operate with integrity and independence that they need, so that crimes can be appropriately investigated, free of external pressure, and that perpetrators are held to account. Unfortunately, this year has also seen many reformers, journalists, and anti-corruption activists subjected to political pressure, intimidation, and even physical violence. During my most recent trip to Ukraine in August of this year, I made it a point to meet with civil society activists and journalists who are combating corruption. I stressed to all of my Ukrainian interlocutors that these attacks are unacceptable and they prevent progress towards Ukraine's vision of a free and open society. Despite these challenges, I'm still confident that Ukraine will remain on its chosen path toward a more democratic and prosperous and just society. And for its part, the United States will continue to support Ukraine's right to determine its own future and will stand with all Ukrainians who work to advance reforms. I look forward with optimism to see what 2021 brings, as hopefully we put this pandemic behind us and we can work more directly towards a U.S. Ukraine relationship. I commend all of you who have joined this conference for your work over many years to strengthen the bonds between our two great nations, Ukraine and the United States of America. Finally, as the holiday season is upon us, let me take this opportunity to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays, and wishes for a successful, prosperous, and healthy New Year in 2021. Thank you again, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to address you this morning.